The Crystal Bay Yacht Club glittered under the evening lights, every surface reflecting the kind of wealth my family had spent decades cultivating. White-jacketed servers moved between tables with champagne flutes and appetizers that cost more than most people's monthly rent. My father's 60th birthday celebration was exactly what everyone expected. Extravagant, perfectly orchestrated, and designed to remind everyone in our social circle exactly where the Morrison family stood. I sat at the far end of the main table, wearing a simple navy dress I'd owned for 3 years. My sister Victoria sat beside Dad, wearing a custom Valentino gown that probably cost $15,000. My brother James was on Dad's other side in his Brioni suit, checking his Patek Philippe watch every few minutes. Mom sat between them, dripping in diamonds, surveying the room like a queen holding court. And then there was me, Emma Morrison. The family embarrassment. "Emma, darling, you look comfortable," Mom said, her voice carrying that particular tone that made comfortable sound like pathetic. She adjusted her Harry Winston necklace. "Is that the same dress you wore to your cousin's wedding last summer?" "It is," I said simply, taking a sip of water. "Not champagne. Water." Because apparently even that was noticed. Victoria leaned forward, her perfect smile razor-sharp. "Well, at least Emma's consistent. Why buy new clothes when you're just going to return to your little apartment afterward?" She said, "Little apartment," the way someone might say, cardboard box. The nearby tables pretended not to listen, but I could see the subtle head tilts, the way conversations quieted just enough to catch every word. My family never missed an opportunity for public humiliation, especially at their most important social events. "Now, Victoria," Dad said, but his tone carried no real reproof. "Your sister is doing her best with limited resources." He turned to his business partner, Mr. Chin, seated 2 chairs down. "My youngest daughter works in maritime logistics. Entry-level position, you understand. We all have to start somewhere." Mr. Chin nodded sympathetically, the way you'd nod at news of a terminal diagnosis. "Entry-level at 32, James added helpfully, swirling his scotch. "But hey, some people are late bloomers, right?" The table chuckled. I smiled and cut into my sea bass. "The thing about being systematically underestimated is that people stop watching you carefully. They stop asking questions. They make assumptions, and then those assumptions become facts in their minds, reinforced by confirmation bias at every turn." 3 years ago, I told my family I was taking a dockside job to learn the shipping business from the ground up. They'd been horrified. Their daughter, with her finance degree from Cornell, working on the waterfront? Dad had threatened to cut me off. Mom had cried to her book club about her daughter, throwing her life away. Victoria had told everyone I was having some kind of breakdown. I'd let them believe whatever they wanted. What they didn't know, what they'd never thought to investigate because they were so certain of my failure, was that I hadn't taken a job in maritime logistics. I'd spent 18 months living in a small apartment near the docks, yes, but I'd been using every penny of my trust fund from Grandma Morrison to buy my first ship. A small cargo vessel, nothing fancy. I'd learned to operate it, manage it, maintain it. Then I'd bought a second. Then a third. Now 3 years later I owned 47 vessels. Cargo ships, luxury yachts, commercial fishing vessels, even 2 cruise ships. Morrison Maritime Holdings was worth $850 million, and I was the sole owner and CEO. My family had no idea. "So, Emma," Victoria said, loud enough for the entire venue to hear, "we need to discuss something important." She exchanged glances with James and Mom. Dad nodded, giving her the floor. "Oh, here it comes," I thought. "This venue cost $45,000 to rent for the evening," Victoria continued. "The catering is another $30,000. Flowers, musicians, parking attendants. When you add everything up, we're looking at about $95,000 total." She paused dramatically, making sure every nearby table was listening. "James and I have each contributed $30,000. Mom added 15 from her personal account." Victoria's smile turned poisonous. "Which leaves 20,000 for you to cover, Emma. Your share of Dad's celebration." The tables around us had gone completely silent now. This was better than dinner theater. I set down my fork carefully. 20,000? "We know it's a lot for you," Mom said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. "Given your situation. But family is family, and this is your father's milestone birthday. We could set up a payment plan," James offered mockingly. Maybe 2,000 a month? You could have it paid off by next summer. Victoria leaned back in her chair, examining her manicure. Or honestly, Emma, if you can't afford it, just say so. We'll cover your portion. Like we always do. But we will be telling people, James added. No more pretending you contributed. Dad deserves a party paid for by children who actually succeeded. I looked at my father. He met my eyes with something between pity and disappointment, the same expression he'd worn for 3 years every time he looked at me. Emma, sweetheart, he said gently, no one expects you to have that kind of money lying around. Your mother and I understand that you're struggling. We just wish you'd accepted the executive position we offered you at Morrison Exports. At least then you'd be earning a respectable salary. Living like a normal person, Mom added. In a proper apartment. With proper clothes. Victoria giggled. Remember when she said she wanted to learn the business from the docks? I told my friends she was probably dating some sailor and too embarrassed to admit it. The table erupted in laughter. Even Dad chuckled. I took another sip of water, letting the moment wash over me. Part of me, a small petty part, was enjoying this. Because in approximately 90 seconds, their entire world was going to shatter. I appreciate your concern, I said calmly. But I can cover my share. Victoria's eyebrows rose. Really? You're going to drain your entire savings account for this? Something like that, I said. Oh, Emma, Mom sighed. You don't have to pretend. We know you're barely scraping by. Mr. Wellington saw you at the grocery store last month using coupons. Coupons? Victoria shrieked with delight. Oh my God, I forgot about that. Our sister. Using coupons. There's no shame in being frugal, Dad said, but his tone suggested he absolutely believed there was shame in it. Though perhaps. He stopped mid-sentence. The entire restaurant's attention shifted toward the entrance, where Michael Torres, the general manager of Crystal Bay Yacht Club, was walking purposefully toward our table. Michael didn't walk to tables during events. He supervised from his office. The fact that he was here now in the middle of dinner service meant something important was happening. Behind him walked Captain Richard Stevens, the harbor master, and 2 other men in the crisp white uniforms of yacht crew. My heart rate didn't change. I'd been expecting this. I'd actually arranged it for 8:47 p.m. precisely, which was, I checked my simple Timex watch. Right now? Good evening, Mr. Morrison, Michael said, nodding politely to my father. My apologies for the interruption during your celebration. Not at all, Dad said, slightly confused but pleased to be acknowledged by management. Is everything all right? More than all right, Michael said. Then he turned to me. His entire demeanor shifted, becoming formal, respectful. Ms. Morrison, I apologize for interrupting your family dinner, but we have an urgent matter requiring your signature. The table went still. Your signature? Victoria said. Why would Emma? Michael continued as if she hadn't spoken, pulling an iPad from the leather portfolio he carried. Your new acquisition, the 180-foot superyacht Meridian, arrived this afternoon. Captain Stevens needs your authorization to proceed with the crew boarding and system checks. Additionally, your fleet coordinator called about the cargo vessels docking in Singapore. There's a customs question that requires owner approval. I watched my father's face. He'd gone pale. I'm sorry, James said slowly. Did you say fleet? Michael glanced at him briefly, then back to me. Sir. Ms. Morrison's maritime fleet. 47 vessels currently in operation across 16 countries. Mom's wine glass tilted in her hand. Red wine began dripping onto the white tablecloth. She didn't notice. Captain Stevens stepped forward, extending his hand to me. Ms. Morrison, it's an honor to finally meet you in person. I've been managing your Pacific operations for 8 months now, but we've only communicated via video conference. Your business acumen is remarkable. I shook his hand. Thank you, Captain. And yes, approve the Singapore customs release. The documentation is all in order. As for the Meridian, I'll come by after dinner to sign off on everything. The Meridian? Dad whispered. That's the yacht that's been moored in the premium slip all week. The one everyone's been talking about. Yes, sir, Michael confirmed. Ms. Morrison purchased it last month. It's valued at approximately $32 million. A beautiful vessel. Victoria made a sound like a dying animal. And you said, 47 vessels? Mr. Chin spoke up, his business mind engaging despite his shock. What's the total valuation of the fleet? Michael looked at me for permission. I nodded. Morrison Maritime Holdings is currently valued at $850 million, he said. Though with the new contracts Ms. Morrison just secured in Southeast Asia, we estimate that will exceed $1 billion within 18 months. The silence that followed was absolute. Even the neighboring tables, which had been pretending not to listen to my sister's earlier humiliation of me, were now openly staring. I reached for my phone, pulled up my banking app and did a quick transfer. $20,000 from my personal checking account, which currently held $8 million, to the Crystal Bay Yacht Club's business account. There, I said calmly, showing the screen to Victoria. My share of the venue cost. Paid in full. Was there anything else we needed to discuss about my inability to contribute? Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. James had gone completely white. You own ships? An actual shipping company. Maritime Holdings, I corrected. Ships, yes, but also port facilities, cargo management, yacht charters and commercial fishing operations. It's diversified. Mom was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. But, your apartment, your clothes, the coupons. I live simply because I prefer it, I said. Every dollar I didn't spend on designer clothes and penthouse apartments went into building my business. While you all were buying luxury cars and vacation homes, I was buying ships. Dad finally found his voice. Emma, why didn't you tell us? I looked at him for a long moment. Tell you? That I did tell you. 3 years ago I told you I was going into maritime business. You laughed at me. You told me I was throwing my life away. You offered me a junior executive position at your company, working under James, instead of supporting my actual ambitions. We thought you were working on the docks. Victoria shrieked. Like, loading cargo or something. I did, I said simply. For the first 6 months. I needed to understand every aspect of the operation. I worked on fishing boats, cargo ships, cruise vessels. I learned navigation, maritime law, port management, customs regulations. While you were posting Instagram photos from Santorini, I was getting certified as a ship captain. You're a ship captain? Mom breathed. Licensed to operate vessels up to 200 gross tons, I confirmed. Though I mostly hire professional captains now. I'm too busy running the business. Michael cleared his throat gently. Ms. Morrison, if you're finished with dinner, I can have your documents ready in the office. Your attorneys are also on video standby for the Singapore matter. Thank you, Michael. I'll be there in 10 minutes. I turned back to my family. If you'll excuse me, I have a fleet to manage. I started to stand, but Dad reached out, grabbing my wrist. Emma, wait. Please. I looked down at his hand, then at his face. For the first time in 3 years, he wasn't looking at me with disappointment. It was something else. Something that might have been respect, mixed with confusion and what looked uncomfortably like fear. Why? He asked quietly. Why build all this in secret? Why let us think you were failing? I gently removed my wrist from his grip. Because you never asked, Dad. Not once in 3 years did you ask me how my business was actually going. You saw my small apartment and my old clothes and you made assumptions. You decided I was failing because I wasn't living the way you thought I should live. You never considered that I might be choosing a different path. But we're your family, Mom said, tears forming in her eyes. You should have told us. Why? I asked genuinely. So Victoria could mock my business the way she mocked everything else about my life? So James could tell his friends his sister was playing with boats? So you could tell your book club about my little hobby? Victoria flinched at that. She knew it was exactly what would have happened. I built this without you, I continued, my voice steady and calm. Without your money, without your connections, without your approval. I built it with Grandma Morrison's trust fund, the only person in this family who ever actually believed in me, and 3 years of 18-hour days. Captain Stevens shifted slightly. 16-hour days actually, if I may correct you, Ms. Morrison. I've reviewed your logs. You're meticulous about rest periods for yourself and crew safety. I smiled at him. Thank you, Captain. You're right. Emma, James said, and for the first time ever, I heard something other than condescension in his voice. We had no idea. The things we said tonight. Were the same things you've been saying for 3 years, I finished. Tonight wasn't special. It was just louder and more public. You've been telling everyone who'll listen that I'm a failure. That I'm an embarrassment. That I'm barely scraping by. We were worried about you, Mom tried. No, I said firmly. You were embarrassed by me. There's a difference. If you'd been worried, you would have asked questions. Offered help. Tried to understand. Instead, you gossiped about me to your friends and used me as an example of what not to do at family gatherings. Mr. Chin spoke up again, his businessman's mind clearly churning. Ms. Morrison, I hope you don't mind me asking, but how did you secure financing for 47 vessels? Even with a trust fund, the capital requirements must have been enormous. Started small, I said. Bought one damaged cargo ship at auction for $300,000. Spent 4 months learning to repair it myself. Every system, every mechanical component. Then I ran it for a year, building capital and reputation. Banks don't usually lend to 30-year-old women with no maritime experience, but they will lend to ship captains with proven operational records and perfect payment histories. You fixed an entire cargo ship yourself? James asked, incredulous. With hired help for the major mechanical work, yes. I can overhaul an engine, repair hull damage, rewire electrical systems. I'm not as fast as a professional crew, but I know every inch of my vessels. I glanced at my watch again. And right now I need to go approve some contracts. Enjoy the rest of the party. I took 3 steps before Victoria's voice cracked across the room. You're just going to leave? Walk away from your own father's birthday party? I turned back. Victoria, you literally just spent 20 minutes telling everyone here that I'm too poor and unsuccessful to be part of this family. You made it very clear I don't belong. So yes, I'm going to leave. I have work to do. Real work. The kind that involves managing an $850 million company. But, the cake, Mom said weakly. The speeches. We had a whole program planned. Did any of those speeches mention me? I asked. Or was I just supposed to sit quietly in my cheap dress while you all celebrated the successful members of the family? The guilty silence was answer enough. That's what I thought, I said. I pulled out my phone, opened my calendar and held it up so they could see. In 3 hours, I have a video conference with shipping partners in Tokyo. Tomorrow morning at 6, I'm touring a new port facility in Baltimore. Tomorrow afternoon, I'm negotiating the purchase of 3 container ships from a Korean company. Tomorrow evening, I'm having dinner with the CEO of Global Logistics to discuss a potential partnership worth $200 million. I lowered the phone. So no, I won't be staying for cake and speeches that don't include me. But I will pay for the entire party if that helps. All $95,000. Consider it my gift to you, Dad. Happy 60th birthday. I transferred the full amount before anyone could respond, then held up my phone showing the transaction. There. Paid in full. Enjoy your evening. Dad stood up abruptly, nearly knocking over his chair. Emma, please. Don't leave like this. Let's talk. Really talk. About everything. I studied his face. He looked older suddenly, the laugh lines around his eyes seeming more like worry lines now. Mom was crying openly. James looked shell-shocked. Victoria was staring at her lap, her earlier smugness completely evaporated. Okay, I said finally. Let's talk. But not here. Not at your party, surrounded by all your friends and business associates. If you actually want to understand my life and my choices, you can come visit me. Tomorrow. 9 a.m. I'll text you the address. Your apartment? Mom asked hopefully, clearly envisioning some kind of scene where she could swoop in and help me decorate or some other maternal gesture that would make her feel better. No, I said. My office. Morrison Maritime Holdings headquarters. I'll give you a tour of the operations center, show you the fleet management systems, introduce you to my executive team. You can see what I actually do all day instead of imagining me barely surviving in some efficiency apartment. Captain Stevens spoke up. If I may, Ms. Morrison, your 9 a.m. is the quarterly review meeting with your division heads. Perfect, I said. My family can observe. They'll get to see exactly how I run a 9-figure business. I looked back at Dad. Unless you're too busy? I know Morrison Exports has its own operations to run. Dad shook his head quickly. No. I'll be there. We'll all be there. He looked at Mom and my siblings. They nodded, still too stunned to do much else. Good. I turned to Michael. Lead the way to your office. Let's get these documents signed. As I walked away from the table, I heard Mr. Chen's voice, quiet but carrying in the silence. Morrison, you didn't mention your daughter owned the Morrison Maritime Holdings. I've been trying to get a meeting with their CEO for 6 months. Do you think, could you introduce me? I didn't hear Dad's response, but I could imagine his face. Michael's office was mercifully quiet after the chaos of the dining room. Captain Stevens had the paperwork ready, and my attorneys joined via video conference to review the Singapore customs matter. The issue was minor, a misclassified cargo code, and resolved within minutes. How did it feel? Captain Stevens asked as I signed the Meridian documents. How did what feel? Finally telling them. I've worked for you for 8 months and I've heard you on the phone with your family. The way they talk to you. He shook his head. It must feel good to finally show them the truth. I set down the pen. Honestly, I don't feel much of anything. I stopped needing their approval somewhere around month 6, when I successfully negotiated my 3rd ship purchase entirely in Mandarin with a Shanghai broker. You speak Mandarin? And Spanish and Portuguese and passable Japanese. You can't run a global maritime business if you only speak English. I signed the last page. The Captain Stevens, the Meridian is officially activated. Please ensure the crew completes all safety certifications by Monday. I want her ready for charter by next weekend. Already booked, he grinned. Tech CEO from Silicon Valley. 3-week Mediterranean cruise. $250,000. Excellent. That'll cover the maintenance costs for the fishing fleet. I stood, gathering my simple black purse. I should get back. At least to say a proper goodbye to Dad. When I returned to the dining room, the energy had completely shifted. The other guests were carefully not looking at our table, but I could feel their awareness, their whispered conversations. Dad was on his phone. Mom was dabbing at her eyes with a napkin. James and Victoria were having an intense whispered conversation that stopped the moment they saw me. I'm heading out, I said. Long day tomorrow. Dad stood immediately. I don't even know what to say. You don't have to say anything tonight, I replied. We'll talk tomorrow. 9 a.m. Don't be late. The quarterly review starts exactly on time. We'll be there, he promised. Then hesitantly, Can I hug you? I let him. It was awkward. We hadn't hugged in 3 years and I realized I'd almost forgotten what it felt like. Mom stood next and wrapped me in one of her signature embraces, the kind she usually reserved for Victoria. I'm so sorry, she whispered. For everything. For not seeing. For not asking. Tomorrow, I said again. We'll talk tomorrow. James extended his hand formally. I've been a complete ass to you. For years. I'm sorry doesn't even begin to cover it, but I'm sorry. I shook his hand. Noted. Victoria was last. She stood but didn't approach, wrapping her arms around herself. I was horrible to you tonight. And before tonight. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't forgive you, I said honestly. Not yet. Maybe not ever. But I'm willing to see if we can build something different going forward. If you actually want to. She nodded, tears streaming down her perfect makeup. I turned to leave, then paused. Oh, and Victoria. That dress is beautiful. The Valentino really suits you. But just so you know, my navy dress cost $45 on sale. I wore it tonight specifically because I knew you'd all mock it. I have a closet full of designer clothes at my penthouse downtown. I just don't care enough about impressing you to wear them. Her face went through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. See you tomorrow, I said, and walked out of the Crystal Bay Yacht Club into the warm night air. My driver was waiting, a former Navy captain named Sarah who now managed my executive transport division. She opened the door of the modest black sedan I preferred for city driving. How did it go? She asked as we pulled away. About as expected, I said. They're coming to the office tomorrow. All of them. All of them. Sarah whistled. Your executive team is going to love that. Especially Marcus. He's been waiting 3 years to meet the family that called you a failure. Marcus Chin, no relation to Mr. Chin from dinner, was my chief operating officer and the first person I'd hired when Morrison Maritime grew beyond what I could manage alone. He was a 60-year-old industry veteran who'd taken a chance on a 29-year-old woman with big dreams and 3 ships. Tell Marcus to keep it professional, I said. This isn't about revenge or proving anything. It's about, I don't know, maybe giving them a chance to actually know me. You're more generous than I'd be, Sarah said. Maybe. Or maybe I was just tired of carrying the weight of their disappointment. Maybe I wanted to see if there was any possibility of a real relationship with my family, one built on who I actually was instead of who they thought I should be. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. I'm proud of you. I should have said that 3 years ago. I'm sorry I didn't. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, see you at 9 a.m. Another buzz. Victoria this time. I've been jealous of you my entire life and I turned it into cruelty. I'm so sorry, Em. She hadn't called me that since we were kids. I didn't respond to that one. Some things needed to be said face to face if they were going to be said at all. Sarah dropped me off at my building, a converted warehouse in the Maritime District that I'd purchased and renovated 2 years ago. The ground floor housed Morrison Maritime's Operations Center. The top 3 floors were my private residence. Living above the shop, basically, but with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the harbor and a rooftop garden where I could watch my ships come and go. I rode the elevator up to my penthouse, kicked off my $45 heels and walked out onto the balcony. Below, the harbor glittered with lights. I could see the Meridian in her premium slip, all 180 feet of her gleaming white and chrome. Beyond her, my cargo vessels were lined up at the commercial docks. Massive ships that looked like floating cities. My phone rang. Unknown number but with a Tokyo country code. I answered in Japanese. Ms. Morrison? This is Tanaka-san from Pacific Shipping Consolidated. I apologize for the late call. Not at all, Tanaka-san. How can I help you? We've reviewed your proposal for the joint venture. My board is very impressed. We'd like to move forward. I smiled into the night air. The joint venture would add 12 more ships to my fleet and open up 3 new trade routes in Asia. Value: approximately $200 million over 5 years. I'm very pleased to hear that, I said. Shall we schedule a formal meeting to review terms? Yes. Also. He hesitated. My daughter is studying business at UCLA. She wants to work in maritime logistics. Would you consider offering her an internship? I'd be happy to review her application, I said. Have her send her resume to our HR department. She'll be honored. Thank you, Ms. Morrison. After we hung up, I stood on the balcony for another hour watching the ships and thinking about tomorrow. About whether my family could actually change. About whether I even wanted them to. Grandma Morrison's voice echoed in my memory. Build something that can't be taken away from you, Emma. Build something that proves your worth to yourself, not to anyone else. I'd done that. Built an empire from a single damaged ship and 3 years of relentless work. Built something that was entirely mine. Whether my family could accept me remained to be seen. But either way I'd be fine. I had ships to run.